Have you ever been afraid of being shadow banned? Being too controversial? You might offend somebody. Well, I have Tiffany here, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about herself first, and then we're going to talk about why this matters to her and why it should matter to you. Tiffany, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffany Zehara. I work with what I consider marginalized businesses. So, those businesses that are facing added stigmas and censorship, and that's from societal taboos, government regulations, things along those lines. And so, what does that typically look like? Well, that's femtech, sex tech, that's sex work, that is alternative medicine and healers, all those that face shadow bans and censorship. So it's wonderful to be here.
That's perfect, because truly all the things that you described are things that are simply parts of our human condition that have been turned into a business, which should, if we're really, and I don't like to should all over the place, but I mean, why are we making being human bad?
And it's one of those things where, there's dicks for days, and, heaven forbid we say vagina or period,
Right?
know.
Sorry, but no, that's perfect. It's true.
And we were talking about explicit content offline, and I break it out in the first 2 minutes. But you know what? This is the reality. We can talk about erectile dysfunction. We can talk about bent carrot. We can talk about erectile dysfunction and all of these things that affect men. But as soon as we start talking about issues that relate to women, and whether that's our pelvic floor issues, whether, the fact that we menstruate once a month, or, if we don't, or if we're going through menopause, and all of these actual things that, relate to giving life, or all, fertility, all of those things. And even if it's fertility for women, but fertility for men, it's a different conversation. And so this is the issue that all of these businesses that I work with are facing. And whether it's talking about, sex or death or anything that is, when it's alternative medicine, when we're talking about issues around something that hasn't been deemed okay by government entities, even if it's a system that's been proven for thousands of years, because it's not under what the government says, they're putting their rubber seal on. There are all of these businesses that can't actually say all the great that they do. And it's how do you deal with these issues? How do you build that trust with your audience when you can't actually say what you do? And people don't want to talk about it, or you actually can't. And
you literally get kicked off of a platform because you want to help somebody with menstruation. Now, and I think that's a really safe place to start, is the conversation about, and it's weird to say safe, because we're not even like, this is something that I guaranteed, somebody hops on here and they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about somebody's menopause. It's like, no, that's, so I say safe very loosely, but talking about something like that is within this construct a safe area to start with. But I don't always play safe. So I want to talk about, I want to bring up a conversation I had actually the other week. I went to an ugly sweater party, which was super fun. And I had a really great conversation with somebody about magic mushrooms, about mushrooms in general, because we were talking about substituting them for coffee. And of course, we explored the idea of edibles. Cool. Now, I have not partaken in this world. It's just not a part of my space, but I am so curious to know about the science behind it. But there's a problem. Because they've been demonized and stigmatized and all this jazz, we don't have the science behind it. And so this person's father, who has ALS, by the way, has been self-medicating with shrooms and CBD, is trying something that only alternative medicine people have a concept about, right? And their studies, while I believe them to be, as well thought out as possible, they don't have the financial backing to be as thorough as if we would lose the stigma and explore what could this actually do for our people. I've literally seen, because I work in the space of mental health and developmental disabilities, I've literally seen children who have hundreds, I'm not even exaggerating, hundreds of seizures a day.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
The drop of CBD oil is down to 2.
Yes, and that's the whole thing is, people who are at their wits' end and don't know where to go, there are businesses that exist. I was actually last Thursday, at this time, I was having this conversation with someone. She specializes in proper dosing for those that are trying to figure out who are scared to try this because of the demonization. But
Yeah.
again, they are having all of these seizures a day, or they're having all of these other symptoms,
Pain
ALS,
or yeah.
exactly, everything, but they don't know where to go. And this person in particular does not have an online presence, cannot have an online presence because where we are, while it's technically legal, there's a lot of gray around it
Mm,
still. And so to be fully out there, it's very unsteady. And that's part of the issues is for so long these businesses have had to operate in the underground, and there's a lot of mistrust.
mhm.
Um, and I mean, obviously not all of the businesses that come into this category, but a lot of them have. There's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of concern for their own safety, for their client safety, and all of these things. And it ends up hurting the people that it really can be benefiting as it's coming into the light. And it's really, really unfortunate because it can do a lot of good. But when you don't know where to go and you're only having to rely on word of mouth, but if you don't have, the people in your network to be able to have these conversations with, it's so unfortunate that this is what is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think about a post that I saw actually over on LinkedIn it was actually, it may have even been last year. Someone who specializes in menopause for women and the experience of menopause and the integration of work and how that really it impacts it
Yeah.
drastically. And I thought, oh wow, this is so interesting. And of course, I glanced down at the comments, and there's 140 something comments. Right?
Right.
Okay, let's check
Mhm.
this out. And I can't tell you the number of in particular men who were like, this is not a work issue. This is a professional platform. We shouldn't be talking about menopause. And I said, it may not be a work issue for you directly, but indirectly, her experience of menopause, that doesn't stop when she walks through the door and punches in, PS,
Right.
will
Right.
directly affect everything within her vicinity, including you, which means you better watch out because those hot flashes are going to come and she's going to bite your head off. So if you're not going to create a space where she feels safe, heard, understood,
Hmm.
then I mean, everybody's at a loss at that point because now she's also not functioning at her capacity. Some
Yeah.
genius woman who needs just a minute, but you won't give it to her is not going to execute.
Exactly. And that's what this is really about. It's not about, necessarily these businesses that are like, "Oh, that's not for me."
Mhm.
It's talking about equity and inclusion for everyone, because when we're ostracizing one person or one business, it just affects everyone and it impacts everyone, unfortunately, in a negative way. You're just hurting so many people that you could be helping. And so this is really about equity and inclusion.
Yeah, yeah. And when it comes to showing up for your business, I'm just I'll bring this back to content creation, marketing your business, talking
Right.
about yourself in an overt way. Let's just like maybe walk past the underground word of mouth, which is a valid form of
Yes,
marketing. P.S.
absolutely.
For everybody to hear, that is a
Absolutely.
valid form of marketing. But
Yes.
let's just look at more of the overt. I'm seeing a lot of um, misspelling misspelling.
Mhm,
Segs I think it's hilarious, but that's a great
mhm.
misspelling way to kind of circumvent, or putting like dashes or asterisks or adding numbers instead of
Oh, yeah, the ethical porn, posts I see with we're just gonna throw some numbers in, so this does not get picked up on the sensors because it's totally going
exactly.
to. Yes.
So
Yeah.
what do you think about that? Because this is a way, I guess, to kind of try not to be censored or shadow banned while still promoting an essential service, including, and I know people might roll their eyes or be like, oh, I don't know about this, but including things like we were just talking about actually before this chat is phone sex workers.
Mhm.
This is
Yeah.
really important. This is actually and I don't think people understand on a societal level actually how important that is for many different levels of society.
Yes. Yes. People are like, oh, that still exists. Yes, let me tell you why it still exists. Because there are still people who need that support. There is so much loneliness in the world, and it's, again, going back to that isolation. This is not necessarily a conversation about, just like these businesses that are fringe. This is about inclusion, and there's so many layers to this. And when we're talking about phone sex, there are so many people that think, oh, okay, well, just go watch some porn. It's not about that. It's that intimacy.
Yeah.
It's that connection with another person. And a lot of the times the callers are just wanting that human connection because they're not getting that in other areas of their life. And whatever form of sex work there is, and this is one of the areas that I specialize in, is because you're providing a safe space for those that are coming to you to actually be themselves and to be the worker that's providing that safe space. And someone's coming to you and they're trusting you and they're in very vulnerable positions. That wasn't supposed to be a pun, but there's very vulnerable
But it was
states.
a fabulous one. And let's
Thank you very
honor
much.
that.
They're in very vulnerable states, and they're giving you that trust and that um you know I don't want to say power always. It's not always about a power dynamic, but you get to see someone that is their true self that 99% of the world doesn't see, especially if there are certain kinks, especially if there's just all this other stuff that they may not feel safe and comfortable to talk about with others. And so it's really important that we really look at that relationship dynamic, not only with how it relates to business and necessarily getting out there, but just as humanity in general, because that's what really this is about. So going back a bit to your question,
Yeah.
it's about promoting the conversation and it's about the education, and really these issues aren't going away. Loneliness, isolation, whether again that's because of menopause issues at work, or wanting certain kinks that your spouse doesn't know about, or you don't feel comfortable talking about, or wherever you are in life and what you're wanting, it's about coming together and furthering the conversation in a safe space and fostering this compassion, this empathy, just connection with other humans. And that's what this is really, really important about. And so, having the conversations, it's not even always so much about a marketing standpoint, because, when you were talking about the word of mouth, that's important. But for the people that are wanting to be the consumers, like if they don't have those accesses to the spaces, it's about promoting the conversation and the safe space and that authenticity, that realness. And that just
this is
yeah.
so good. I love it because it's really creating change. It's creating
Yes.
societal global change in the world.
Uplifting the world.
Marketing, because
Yes.
everybody here is like, I know what you're gonna say, Shauna. You're never not marketing. You're never not marketing. And so this and the reason I say you're never not marketing is because every single thing you do, every choice you make, whether you agree or disagree with the censorship of these scary topics to some people. I mean, I'm sorry for belittling that, but I mean, they're
no, but it's real. This is what society thinks. They're like sex workers. You know what I mean? Like,
actually, I have a story for that one too.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that in a minute. But like this idea of like, you're never not marketing, because everything you do, everything you put out into the world, and everything you take in and how you process that, and then subsequently put it out into the world again, because you will, that impacts the dynamic of like the global dynamic, the societal functioning of the world. Like, you don't understand how pivotal every single one of these different pieces is to creating our lived experience. And I want to reflect back on, in particular, we're going to go with sex workers, because I was having a conversation with someone, and they were telling me a story about a person they know who has social deficits. And this person was like, I want to find a significant other. And I want to be able to have an emotional and physical connection with them. But I'm having a hard time practicing both of those things. And because of their social deficits, they're like, what do I can't just, any volunteers? Like that's not the way it works. So how can you practice something?
Yeah.
Well, this is how. In a safe environment,
Yes.
you can practice. What does it look like to hold somebody's hand, to kiss, to hug in an appropriate manner at different stages of a relationship?
Yes.
What does it look like to try sex for the first time? That's a huge deal. And it's not always readily available with a consenting partner. And this is a safe space to do so.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that's huge.
Absolutely. And with kink specifically, there's unfortunately the 50 Shades of Grey popularity has really those who have not been in the lifestyle automatically think that, unfortunately. And but kink is so much, BDSM is so much about consent that people just don't understand. Like going to a kink club versus going to, your standard club, and just like the difference in how everything is. There's so much about consent and so much about owning who you are again, and your boundaries, and what you want to do and what you don't want to do, and vocalizing that. And so it's, this is all just going down to being who you really are, being safe to be who you really are, and having these types of conversations is perpetuating the safety. I mean, I like to think, and normalizing it so that there is that safety to be able to talk to people that you wouldn't typically, open up to about whatever it is, whether it's, I brought up death, working with death doulas, and, I'm, maybe sentenced to, okay, I have 3 months, 4 months. And, how do I talk about that with my family and friends? Do I even want to talk about it to myself? Like, do I even want to address that? Like, it's all of these things that, it's just really unfortunate to not have that safety, whether it's in your own body or just in society in general. And so the more we have these conversations, I like to think that the more that safety is permeating out, that trust, that understanding, that empathy.
And I think I'd like to, if you'll entertain me here, because I actually, the things that I wrote down right at the get-go was sex, death, and alternative medicines. And we've kind of addressed 2 of the 3, but let's dive into that death conversation again a little bit, because I think this is going to be a great example of marketing in particular of, and I'm going to get kind of boring. We're going to talk about like the actual tactics of marketing, brand messaging. What do you put out into the world? Because you kind of have to veil everything, right? So this is really important. So everyone who has listened to me for any length of time will know that I talk about your right fit client, your client avatar, your ideal person. You need to know them like the back of your hand, better than the back of your hand. Okay. You need to know. The reason I said that is because I didn't realize I had that freckle, but I looked at my hand and went, oh, that's new, which isn't surprising. I have so many freckles, guys.
I like it. I was just thinking of having because we talked about little eyes, like sticky notes, and I was like, oh, you've got to put little eyes now on there. Yeah. Little smiley face. Yeah.
Oh, that's it. So anyway, guys, listen, it's better than the back of your hand. Okay. We need to know, our people. And I know, because I've dove into this world a little bit. The topics that you want to talk about in order to appeal to your ideal client, as we're going to use this as an example, a death doula or any other marginalized service provider, you're not allowed to talk about.
Right.
You're not allowed to talk about, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about it. I'm like, am I going to get censored? Maybe. You're not allowed to talk. Like, okay, so assisted suicide.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to talk about it, but it exists. It's real. People experience it. Never mind assisted. But there are so many layers. What
Right.
about hospice? You're not allowed
Mhm.
to talk about it. You get canceled. You get shit on.
Mhm.
Those are very real things
Yeah.
that people experience every single day. And a person
Mhm.
like a death doula, and oh my goodness, I all of the good vibes onto these beautiful people who help
Yes.
someone through some of the most difficult transitions in life.
Mhm.
Death is a part of life.
Mhm. It is.
Like, why do they need to sprinkle sunshine and daisies over everything when
Yeah.
somebody's literally dying?
Yeah.
That's going to feel like shit. So they should be able to, not always, listen, I'm not always. Sometimes it's a relief. Sometimes, and that's another conversation. See, this is the thing. I go down this rabbit hole because I've supported these people. Sometimes death doulas are also helping the living to deal with the death. And
Exactly.
that's
And people don't talk
how,
about that. Yes. Yes.
right? They can't
Mhm.
talk about the relief of the death of their partner.
Right.
Heaven
Right.
forbid. They feel relieved that they don't need to spend the
Or
next
their
decade of their
parents.
life caring. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's these conversations are so important to connecting with their right fit audience, to
Yeah.
really appealing to them and their very real now needs. But
Right.
they're not allowed to, because if they say that word without a misspelling or a dash, which can make you seem unprofessional, which isn't fair, like
Right.
you can see now through this conversation, not just you, Tiffany, because I know you know, but everybody listening here, you can see now how marketing is that much more complex
Mhm.
for these marginalized businesses, for these
Mhm.
businesses who offer services that are so important, but now they have to skirt the edges and seem unprofessional and not actually effectively market by hitting the nail on the head. They have to be elusive. That's not a
Well,
thing,
even that, like, then sensors are starting to pick up, oh, okay, well,
right?
this emoticon is being used in this context, and starting to realize,
The eggplant.
yeah, or the peach, or
Yes.
even just the whole thing with the orange and the tampon, like all of these ways that are trying to be worked around, and it's like, no, we know what you're talking about, but this is life. This is the
Yeah.
reality of life. We need to have these conversations, and we need to feel safe enough to have the conversations, or else we're further isolating ourselves and the world.
Okay, guys, everybody take a deep breath in. Oh my
I
goodness.
know that got real heavy. Sorry.
Okay, you didn't know you were going to have this kind of like in-depth conversation on for me, it's a Thursday morning, almost afternoon, but here we are having it. Now, if you have any questions about these topics, Tiffany and I both are very open to have these conversations. It's not scary to me, and it's not scary to Tiffany. If you're curious about what does this look like, how do I approach this? And maybe you're not thinking action right now. Maybe you're thinking just internal development. That's okay. Ask
Yeah.
the question, have the conversations. Marketing is starting a conversation and building a relationship. That is the root of marketing. So
Mhm.
start the conversation, build the relationship. Please do so. Now, Tiffany, I'm going to invite you to share some last thoughts, even though that last one was kind of like mind blowing. I'm going to invite you to share some last thoughts and let people know where they can reach out to you, because these conversations need to be had. And I know you have some spaces where you offer the opportunity to do so.
So thank you so much for ending on the relationship piece, because that's really what this is about. It's about connecting. And so I invite you to search for me on LinkedIn. We can have a conversation, whether it's just in the chat or actually have a coffee chat. It's just my name, Tiffany Zehara, Zehara. And I am also offering people space that for all of those who don't feel welcome in traditional networking events, whether you are in these fringe spaces or for whatever reason you just don't feel comfortable in traditional networking events, or you're not welcome. I have a once a month event where all of us come together. We have conversations. It's about relationships. It's not fast pitching. It's none of that. It's actually getting to know each other and how we can support each other and uplift the world. All of those links are in the show notes. It's free. Come have a conversation, make a new friend. So yeah.
We're always up for making new friends here. We
Yes.
like that. And with that, everyone, please join in this conversation of free networking. Hello. That's kind of a no-brainer. And don't forget to tune in, because we're going to have conversations like this one, and well, maybe not exactly like this one. Let's be real, but We're going to have some really amazing conversations every single week through Marketing Rebels, Breaking Business Barriers. So join in, ask questions, and just be present and real and authentic to you, because you matter. We'll chat soon.